Welcome to a very special episode of A Tryst with Statecraft. It's your host, Teresa Kuruvilla, and it's been a hot minute since we last sat down for another engaging conversation as we say goodbye to a very eventful year here at PSC. For the very first time, today we're joined by not one, but two trailblazers who were here at the very beginning of Project Statecraft and have been integral to the initiative's growth. Abhishek Sudke and Shreyas Ashok Kumar. Our very first guest, Abhishek Sudke, is the visionary founder and driving force behind Project Statecraft. With a mission to bridge the gap between youth, policymaking, and social impact, Abhishek has built a platform that fosters nonpartisan research, advocacy, and community driven solutions. Over the last 4 years, his leadership has brought together over 300 volunteers, institutionalized teams, and created a thriving ecosystem for youth participation in governance. Beyond Project Statecraft, Abhishek has made his mark globally as a policy officer to India's G20 Sherpa, where he played a crucial role in shaping the outcomes of India's G20 presidency, including contributions to the landmark New Delhi Leaders Declaration. His expertise spans diverse areas such as climate resilience, multilateral reforms, digital transformation, and gender equality, all of which reflect his multidisciplinary approach to problem solving. Our second guest, Shreyas Ashok Kumar, is a key figure in Project Statecraft's journey, served as the Vice President of Data Analytics, and now continues as an advisor to the initiative. From its inception, Shreyas infused a data driven ethos into the organization, ensuring evidence based policymaking and impactful research outputs. Outside of Project Statecraft, Shreyas has forged an impressive career in public policy and governance. Currently, he is a consultant with the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, working through the Nudge Institute to implement the Ultra Poverty Program. His experience as a political and policy data analyst in the office of Praveen Chakravarti, coupled with his tenure as a LAMP Fellow, and has equipped him with a rich understanding of the legislative processes, political strategy, and grassroots social impact. This episode is more than a conversation. It's a celebration of the shared vision and collaborative efforts that turned Project Statecraft into a transformative initiative. Together, Abhishek and Shreyas bring stories of resilience, innovation, and a relentless drive to create a bridge between youth and governments. Thanks again, guys, for joining us for this very special recording.
Thanks, Teresa. It's lovely being here.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, without further ado, I think what everyone deserves to hear in this very special recording is first would be an introduction to your current and past contributions to governance policy and how Project Statecraft has came into being in that journey. So I'd like to first start with Shreyas, followed by Abhishek.
Okay. Yeah, so I think Abhishek and I have had very similar trajectories, both coming from an engineering background. I got interested in policy in college. A little late, considering I'd already taken up engineering, but better late than never, I guess. The biggest stumbling block that I faced as an engineering graduate trying to get into policy was that there's very few levers that you can really push to get opportunities in the space without having prior experience, and there's nobody there to give you that first bit of experience, right? So that's actually where Project Statecraft came. It was my first ever time at a think tank, and when Abhishek offered me the opportunity to join as, I think, one of the very first research interns that Project Statecraft ever took on. So I was super grateful that I had the platform for me to do my research and for somewhere for it to be published so that people could see that I was actually capable of doing it despite not having the same skills or the academic background that the rest of my peers had. And I've always maintained that Project Statecraft was a huge reason for why the LAMP fellowship happened in my career. So yeah, always grateful for that. But yeah, as I said, I then became a LAMP fellow. I worked with a member of parliament for a year on various parliamentary interventions, a lot of constituency problems, drafting speeches, questions, debates, press conferences, all of these different types of things. I think it sort of all culminated in drafting a private member's bill in the end that was introduced in parliament, which was extremely rewarding. I then moved into the Indian National Congress. I worked with Mr. Praveen Chakravarti, who's now the chairman of All India Professionals Congress and also the data analytics department of the Congress Party. Uh, he's also a political economist, so the majority of my work was on economics and a lot of policy research that I did. But there was a little bit of everything. I did a lot of political work, some surveys, um, honestly, a whole lot that if I get into, will probably dedicate an episode just to those 2 years. But yeah, I was very, very grateful for the opportunity that he also gave me in trying to platform some of my research and a lot of the work that I did. And that culminated in me working with the manifesto committee for the Congress Party for the 24 elections. So I worked with Mr. P. Chidambaram, the chairman of the manifesto committee and former finance minister, on the manifesto itself. So I did a lot of research for the various chapters that it had. So that was, if the private members was rewarding, this is probably doubly so, because I saw some of the impact that it had, especially after the elections, where some of our solutions were then taken up by the government to implement, because on the face of it, they were good policy solutions, right? So again, extremely, extremely rewarding work that way. After the elections ended, I joined as a consultant with the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. I'm a data and tech analyst there, where I'm working on implementing the economic inclusion program, where we're trying to implement the graduation approach. It's a cash plus care policy intervention for the poorest of the poor Dalit households in this country. So yeah, we're trying to pilot that with the ministry, and it's been smooth sailing so far. So yeah, going good.
That's so great to know that you forged quite an impressive career and, of course, your contributions to PSC. And it's really cool to know that, like, everyone who's intertwined in the PSC mission has also forged out in the world to do greater good. Now, coming back to our second guest, Abhishek, can you tell us a little bit about this small project that you've talked about, Project Statecraft, and how it has transformed into the movement it is today?
Wow. Okay. So firstly, thank you so much for calling it a movement. I think that's a huge statement. And something I think we've been fairly successful at. And you're perfectly on point when you said that it started as a small project, because it genuinely did. And for me personally, I think one of the core reasons why it was so impactful was, uh, I think, following engineering as we were going through the pandemic, we were going through successive lockdowns, and personally, I think I was going through a series of life-changing decisions that were not made by me. A lot of the rejection that I faced during my final year of engineering, uh, from jobs, from a lot of fellowships, like one of them that Shreyas did. Uh, I think that was Project Statecraft was something that kept me going through all of it. It started at the end of my engineering during lockdown as a platform, like Shreyas perfectly mentioned, a platform to publish research, because that's how we started. And the main reason why we even decided to do that was, by that time we did not see a non-partisan, independent, and truly youth-owned platform that could provide us with that reach to put our research up and at the same time take it forward, right? And I think that's how it started. And something tremendous about Project Statecraft is listening about other people's journeys. I think when I heard Shreyas and his journey, and by the way, throughout that whole journey, that he was a LAMP fellow, he joined Congress, he was with Project Statecraft in some form or another, contributing, sometimes in a small way, sometimes in a big way. But I think when it comes to culminating all of that experience together, it changed the organization the way it is. And the best part is that Shreyas is just one of the people who did that. I think there were many other people who joined us, who've continued to stay on, and continue to contribute to making this movement something which would eventually bring young people really close to policy making and to social impact. And that's what we're working towards. Personally, as you mentioned really well, most recently I was working with India's G20 presidency. But something even more recent is currently I'm a student I'm studying at the London School of Economics and Political Science. I'm doing my master's in public administration, and it is such a serene experience having to be a student again uh, after after doing engineering, which I fell out of which I fell out of love for over the 4 years, especially the year and a half of the pandemic, when I was truly focused on trying to do something in policy or trying to do something in social impact. But before this and before working on the G20 presidency, I worked with development organizations for 2 years. I was an intern with Path during the COVID pandemic when oxygen crisis truly hit India in the worst possible manner, and it was a very terrible time for our health systems, which were not prepared and showed a lot of gaps that it has. And at the time, I was working with them to provide oxygen to a lot of state governments and to states. Uh, After that, I worked on a couple of consulting projects that were not limited to India, and that is what gave me the push to go to G20 and gave me that step as well. Because as someone who understood both the center state dynamics, understood how to work around in high pressure situations like COVID, and at the same time had some global exposure through consulting, I think I made a good case to be part of the G20 presidency, and it uh, it went on in the most incredible manner. Like the exposure that I received through the process throughout these three experiences was something which shaped me as a person, and at the same time shaped Project Statecraft as an organization that has grown with us. And the most incredible part of Project Statecraft and me is, I think, somewhere in the middle, I started thinking that Project Statecraft is this symbiotic arm of mine, which should grow with me, and I should grow with Project Statecraft. And what I love is that that's an attitude and that's a virtue that a lot of people in the organization, especially the ones who are leading it now, have adopted. So yeah, I think calling it a movement is something brilliant, and I'm extremely, extremely proud of how far we've come and how much ahead we can go moving ahead, especially with all the people who've hang back with us.
That's truly quite the emotional start with that we needed for this episode. And I really think that there's some extraordinary force that brought us here today, because clearly your paths have intertwined. Some might even call it fate, the reason why we're all here today, and the same mission and values that we uphold here at Project Statecraft. So that's really, really cool to know. And both of you have been such integral parts of the very grassroots levels of Project Statecraft that it's really remarkable to see how far and how things will go far to go from here on out. Now, coming back, Abhishek, you've broadly classified the divisions of Project Statecraft quite meticulously. So we have the research, we have the learning, and we have the advocacy divisions. Can you tell us why research was one of the very first divisions of Project Statecraft?
So I think a lot of it comes from the backgrounds that all of us came from. I think Shreyas and I, we met because of Model UN. My other co-founders who started uh, PSC with me, Akshat and Shivank, who's doing tremendous work in tech policy today, by the way. We all came from this single Model UN society, and we were all extremely passionate debaters, extremely passionate uh, policy enthusiasts. And when the lockdown crammed us into four walls, we wanted to uh, put our thoughts out there, and that's how we started with research. I did not ever imagine that this is the scale or this is the scope at which we will to which we will go. I think we picked up a lot of it on the way as we were going, as we realized a lot of gaps that existed in the system. But I think when it comes to research, it was informed by our background. At the same time, it was also informed by the uh, political situation that was affecting the socio-economic condition of the country at the time. Like we were talking 2020, we were talking uh, at that time, I think in the second term of the current government, there was a lot of, and there has been continued concern about the freedom of media, and it's a very, very valid concern. And I think we felt very strongly about it back then, as we still do. So this was the way we thought that, it's important that we put out non-partisan content. It's important that we put out an independent view of policy issues that affect the young people, that affect our future. And that has been something which has been very core to what we do. So you will find posts and research blogs which are going to praise the government a few weeks, but after maybe a few weeks later, you might find something which is not doing so in the most in the most pleasing manner to the government. So I think that's something which we've been able to achieve from that first move of making research one of our first divisions.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, one thing that PSC has over an edge is really the fact that we've decided to pursue independent data collection. And I know for a fact, Shreyas, who was the very first president of the data analytics division, had personally informed me that Project Statecraft takes pride in collecting own independent data, and that is also derived from independent sources. So, Shreyas, can you tell us what is the data collection process in PSC and the overall process of research?
Yeah, sure. So the purpose behind setting up data analytics is such a crucial aspect of our research at Project Statecraft, as well as other aspects of it. There was a lot of internal decision making that we tried to switch towards data-driven processes instead as well. But the basic idea behind it is that you can really maximize the impact of anything that you're putting out, the more data-driven it is. So this is sort of the focus that we went into it with. So the basic processes remained the same, I think, for any data-driven process. The innovation wasn't really that we had some revolutionary tools or that we did something extraordinary. The more crucial thing that we did was inculcating it at the very basics of our research, right? So that's something that is perhaps lacking in a lot of the field nowadays. But the basic idea was that if you can put data at the foundation of your research, it can set you up for something bigger and more impactful later on. So this sort of mindset was what we tried to cultivate amongst the researchers, because essentially what having data in your research does is it sets up the base for the next steps of policymaking. Putting research out there and publishing it is one step. Then there comes the actual policy and decision making that comes based on the research, right? So the more data driven you are, the more impact you'll have in those fields. So the better your advocacy will be, the better the policy making structures will be, and things like that. So this was the basic idea. As I said, we didn't really do anything unique with the processes. It was more of taking existing good practices that other people were doing and trying to inculcate that. So we did a lot of training with a lot of people. We set up the vertical to produce sort of wholly data-driven research, where the idea that we came up with, the initial hypothesis that we came up with, was based on what type of data we could collect, right? So rather than focusing our research on, okay, maybe I'll talk about this topic this day, let's talk about this bill that's coming up in Parliament, etc. We thought that, okay, let's just collect data on a particular topic or a general field, and then see where the data takes us. And then we can start coming up with topics that way. We did some really interesting work on trying to find sort of correlations between economic development and the political state at the time, the results of elections and things like that, where we went with the mindset of, okay, we don't know whether there is a correlation, so that's not going to be our focus. Our focus is going to be collecting the data that we can possibly use to find something like this. So as we did it, we realized that, okay, there is actually so much economic development that is perhaps is impacted by politics. There's some part of it that's not. So then trying to find different indicators that do all of that. So the main thing is that rather than focusing on research as for research's sake, we try to make it data driven so that, as I said, it gives that good platform for the next steps of the research being published as well. So that was sort of the mindset that we tried to cultivate.
Well, that's really cool. And I'm really glad to know that several proprietors and indicators and stakeholders were involved in ensuring that various reports and documentation was done to ensure that we get the concise and right data in whatever field that we pursue. Now, Shreyas, another question posed to you. We're living in a time where AI has seemed to dominate the sphere of research and public policy. What do you think? Is artificial intelligence a boon or bane in data analytics and research? And would you personally advise it for anybody who's pursuing this career to incorporate it?
Okay. This is something that Abhishek and I have talked about in the past as well, in more informal settings. But uh, I look at AI in two things when it comes to research and policy, and data analytics for that matter. One is using AI as a tool, and the second is using AI as the product itself, right? I think AI as a product is extremely useful in policy as well. Um Essentially, AI as a product can help simplify processes that were earlier challenges, right? So in policy, especially when you're trying to implement something new, one of the biggest challenges you can face is language. Now, India is super diverse. There's languages in every state, every district, every block, there's different languages, every village is a different language. So trying to reach the last mile is incredibly difficult, right? AI can really help simplify some of these things if you can inculcate it as a product as part of your policy, right? For example, if you're trying to have communication material put out about a particular policy that you're trying to advertise, just using AI to disseminate that in different languages makes it so much simpler than imagine in the past having to hire out so many translators, produce different content in different languages, just in order to raise awareness about a policy, right? So I think AI as a product is super useful. AI as a tool, I'm a little less sure about. I think essentially it's sort of reductive of the research and the process of research, right? So uh, I think AI helps overlook critical thinking and creativity as a step in the research process. And this is a super important step. And I think it's overlooked anyway, even without AI. But AI sort of makes it easier to create lazy policy or research that doesn't have the critical thinking or creativity within it. I think when people are researching about a particular topic and trying to produce content based on that, a very important thing that I like to keep in mind is you have to do a lot of literature review. That's 100% sure. You have to create the context within your mind about the issue that you're trying to address. But then the next step is not immediately start putting that down on paper and trying to create a structure around it, etc. The next step is to really take a step back and close your laptop and close your books and think about the issue at hand. Try to get a picture of it in your head and think about it critically. What is right? What is wrong in this? What are the different pros and cons that you see in each of these things? And try to craft these arguments in your own head before putting them down on paper or trying to take somebody else's opinion on it. And then try to start to structure your research and start putting it down on paper, right? And I think AI makes it really easy to overlook that step because AI gives you the already packaged information and it makes it super easy to do that. And I know there are smaller other minor problems about AI. There's a lot of factual problems that people don't fact check their AI work, and AI gets a lot wrong. And that's mainly due to the second problem, which is that a lot of AI isn't Indian contextualized. So there is some work to be done on that, but I'm still fundamentally against it because of the philosophy of using AI in as a tool, but very on board as a product. I think it has better advantages in data analysis because it bridges the skill gap required to do data analytics because you no longer have to be an expert in a programming language to understand data. I think AI helps you bridge that gap super easily. It gives you snippets of code that you can use ready packaged to analyze the type of data that you want. And that's a good thing. I don't think there should be sort of we should gatekeep data analytics based on your knowledge of a programming tool. Programming tools are just that, right? They're tools. You can't expect everybody to know that. So as long as you have the right thinking process towards using data, you should be able to access it. So AI really helps you do that. So I'm a big proponent of it in data analytics.
Well, I really like the diplomatic approach you've given to artificial intelligence. You've classified it into as a product and as a tool to help enhance our pursuit in data analytics and research. And of course, let's not forget, nobody can replace the joy of truly finding out the essence of research, which is either in the form of books and reports. And it's really become hard to relive that joy once you are living in the age of artificial intelligence. And a lot of people think of AI as the easy way out instead of embracing it as a means to, as a catalyst, as a matter of fact, to help in our mission in pursuing research and public policy. I'd like to know, Abhishek, do you agree with Shreyas's points of incorporating AI in public policy? And can you share some instances where it has been a boon or a bane in your mission?
Oh, no, I love the question. And as Shreyas mentioned, we've discussed this at length in more informal settings. So I really love the classification that AI has had, and I think the way the world is looking at AI is also in a very similar manner. They're either looking at it as a tool or they're looking at it as a product. Or Teresa, like you mentioned, they're looking at it as a catalyst for a lot of people, and as Shreyas mentioned, the skilling part as well. Now I have a distinct view of AI when it comes to the way it needs to be regulated and ideally the way it needs to be as a technology. So I think as a technology, uh, AI needs to be very cognizant of where it can impact people in a positive manner. How do you ensure that the human in the loop, when it comes to AI, is empowering that human, and at the same time is helping make AI itself more accountable and more transparent to the people? Because at the end of the day, I think that is something which is extremely crucial, and that's where the perceptive problem of people is as well. Because a lot of the times when people think about AI today, uh, it starts and ends with generative AI, which is a very which is extremely nascent, right? It is something generative AI is something that has uh, stormed to boom in the last 9 months, 12 months. But the work on AI, the work on machine learning is something which has been going on for decades before this. And that can truly make a lot of difference when it comes to people. So I think there needs to be that balance of perception among people for this technology, the expectation from this technology. And that's how you make sure that the way the technology grows is also something that keeps the human in the loop and improves the human in the loop. When it comes to regulating it for public policy, I think it needs to be something which, especially for a country like India, it has to be a very pro-job approach. I think we have a huge population who is extremely low skilled and who can make extremely productive gains using AI, but such that the balance of that generative AI and AI tools and its application needs to be regulated so that it benefits those people, so that it benefits people. And one of the examples that shared about language is something which is extraordinary. But at the same time, there are a lot of other applications like this. If you're able to utilize AI uh, in a manner to reduce the complexity in accessing digital financial services, and accessing insurance, in accessing uh, lending, in accessing wealth management. I think that can be something which is very extraordinary for people and can create a lot of good jobs uh, that help people. And at the same time, there are a lot of needs of societies like India, which has a huge uh, population that is still undergoing education. So I see AI having a lot of potential when it comes to education as well, where we are able to reach the masses. But I think that has to be complemented with a very very pragmatic approach towards training, towards digital literacy, and towards understanding the harms and understanding how well do you use it. I think we missed the bus with social media for this, and we are suffering the effects of it today, and I think we will keep suffering the effects of it for the near term if we don't get ourselves to learn AI well. We are headed for another missed bus and a lot of consequences for the long-term future. So yeah, like I think it needs to be embraced. At the same time, it needs to be regulated well, because whoever is not catching on to the AI train right now is going to go extinct, to be in a professional setting or be it in an institutional setting. If governments are not going to uh, get their acts together and understand how well to work with AI, I think it's going to be extremely catastrophic for them. And same with people.
Well, I'd like to say that both your views on artificial intelligence are very valid because it has also allowed a layman to explore complex topics and also bring about remarkable research. So while Abhishek has advocated for the use of AI, of course, with the right level of caution, Shreyas has seem to being approach a more pragmatic take, and has always been a fan of the traditional forms of research while also embracing AI as a product and more of a tool. So that's really cool to know. Another thing about Project Statecraft that I've noticed, especially in my journey, is that people from various backgrounds have come together for the common cause. And of course, these are people from conventional and unconventional areas of expertise. Now, it's important to know that both of you have decided to join Project Statecraft in your academic careers while you were both pursuing engineering degrees and backgrounds. And this is seen as a very conventional, academic path that is especially viewed in our country. I'd like to ask both of you a question. What advice do you have to give to the youth who wish to pursue a career in public policy instead of the more conventional ones viewed in our countries? Shreyas?
Yeah, I'm still young. I think it's a little makes me sound so old that I'm giving advice to people. Uh, no, I'm still not there yet. All I can do is give you some tips that I've used so far, and so far it's been good. I can't guarantee that success that has success, but yeah, this essentially was my mindset, and hopefully it'll help you too. But essentially, looking at patience as the most important virtue when you're trying to pursue a career in this field. Probably more necessary for somebody like me who's coming from a different background. So I need more patience to sort of prove my skills and prove my worth in a particular field where I don't have the same skills or the background that some of my peers do. But even as a general rule, I think it's a pretty good thing to have. But essentially, it's understanding the different stages to career development that you need to have and entering this entire journey. And this is a long journey, right? This is a decades long journey. Entering it with a learning mindset to begin with. So at this age, when you're still in the first few years of your career, focus on learning as much as possible rather than focusing on the end goals that you're trying to achieve. Keep those goals super clear, whether it is that you want to make more money off the field, whether you want to create as much impact as possible, whatever it is. The goal is to take small steps towards those and not really rush anything in the process, and keep the patience that eventually the work that you do will pay off. And as long as you go on with the learning mindset, it absolutely will, because you're actively improving yourself with every step that you take, right? So that's the only thing I'd say. As I said, still young, still not achieved anything. So yeah, take everything with a pinch of salt.
That's some solid advice. Abhishek, care to add to that?
Yeah, as Shreyas mentioned, like it is so true. Like we're still so young, and in fact, just as you were starting, I was texting Shreyas about how I absolutely loved hearing our hearing our introductions, because I think we have gone from having nothing except a student at VIT uh, added to added to our uh, introduction to all of this, right? Like everything that we've been able to do. And yeah, but like it's so limited. I think that is something which a person needs to always keep in mind. And I know, like for a lot of people, personally for me, it's been like a few concerns have always been something which I've always told people that they need to take care of, as I try to keep telling myself as well. Not always successful, but I think imposter syndrome is very real. Um, I think people, a lot of the times, you are you are at the right time at the right place, and uh, one should be extremely mindful of when that happens. And as Shreyas mentioned, I think one of the best ways around imposter syndrome, and even if you say you don't have it, which is great, uh, is passion. I think as Shreyas advocated for patience, I think the other side of it, which I think has been extremely instrumental in for me, has just been approaching anything and everything with a lot of passion. When I started working in public health, I had absolutely no idea, right? And uh, I I think for me that was a time where I thought, okay, this is something entirely new. This is something which I've heard of from time to time, but this is something which is extremely necessary. And It was also, as I mentioned, it was a COVID going on, and that added this sense of responsibility in me, which just made me try to go at what I was going with complete passion. Uh, so be it calls at 3 a.m., be it calls at 6 a.m., whatever it was, I think I was someone who was always up for that. And that has been something which has been extremely appreciated. So one piece of advice that every person in my journey until now, every mentor has given me is to be passionate, and to be passionate not just when you're in that assignment, in that job, but also to be passionate about it but once you're done. Like, as someone who's changed jobs constantly, I never lost touch with the people that I worked with, and I think that is something which truly helped uh, me develop that culture at PSC as well, where I thought that, just because someone is ending their time with us doesn't mean they have to never speak to you again. Like, I think there is a sense of there being that connect, because that is how we grow. Uh, and it's extremely important that you are caring and passionate also about the relationships that you build. So whatever you're doing in your career, I think it's extremely important that you make sure that the bridges remain intact, and you put everything that you have to build those bridges and to learn everything about that bridge that you're building.
Well, I really think Project Statecraft in itself is a testament to the passion that everyone involved has put into. It's truly the end result of years of hard work, of uh, partnerships and alliances that we forged in the last 4 years that made the organization movement it is today. And it's truly without doubt that all of us have come together for a very incredible cause. And it's really cool to know that we have people from various backgrounds who have put in multiple efforts into making sure that each person is aware of the nuances that go into connecting us closer to the governance here in our country. My next question is to Shreyas. This is very random, but what's one achievement that you're proud of looking back?
Sorry, you cut off there at the end. I didn't hear your question.
Oh, my question was, what's one achievement that you're proud of looking back?
Right. I think I'll stick to PSC for this. I think there is some other stuff in my personal life that I'm pretty proud of too. But I think at PSC, the biggest thing that I'm proud of is how we set up the educational development vertical. I think now the learning and development vertical. Uh, Essentially, this started off as a think tank, right? So all we did was research. We had a platform to put our publications out there. But even then, we went in with the goal that we're trying to represent those people who don't get an opportunity to put up their research otherwise, right? So with that goal in mind, PSC was doing a pretty good job. But very quickly, we realized that if we actually do want to achieve that goal, it's not as simple as providing the platform. You also have to provide the skills that go along with that in order to make the research more meaningful, in order to make sure that it has more impact. And what I'm really proud of in this is that Abhishek, when I told this to him that maybe this is a problem that we should look at, wasn't somebody who just sat back and said, "Okay, yeah, true, but it's not something that we should do." We went in with the mindset that, okay, this is a problem. How do we fix it, right? So then we decided that, okay, maybe education should be a part of what we do, so that not only do we have the platform to put the research out there, we also train and upskill people to get to the place where they're confident about putting the research out there and get better at the process itself. So yeah, I mean, we had a lot of initial challenges. I think the biggest challenge was we had to put in a lot of initial investment towards developing a lot of the modules and the syllabus and things like that. And obviously, when we were doing this, there was very little return. So it's very easy to lose motivation, especially in a new project when you're not seeing anything impactful happen to begin with. But I think once we cracked the code of, okay, we have the base ready, we have incredible people on board. I think there were a lot of people back then very passionate about education as a field, and really helped us develop the vertical as a whole. And thanks to all of this happening and coming together, we ended up reaching thousands of people through a lot of educational initiatives. And I think it's one of the verticals that's still going strong today. And every time I see something about it, I still feel so proud that rather than waiting for somebody else to fix the problem, we went in with the mindset that we'll do it ourselves as much as we can, at least. And yeah, that is something I'm super proud of with this organization.
That's really flattering. My next question is to the both of you. What's one aspect of public policy you wish Project Statecraft was more involved with? And can you name some initiatives that PSC had in mind but did not work out? Abhishek?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's one way to get me off my horse. So yeah, like I was definitely swooning before this. And yeah, like one thing which I'm definitely extremely proud of, as Shreyas mentioned, was the learning, innovation, and design unit now. But it's been called a lot of names over the past 3 years that we've been doing it. Um, Now, one aspect of public policy that we wish PSC was in, I think, to start off with, to actually what we were discussing earlier around data analytics. Um, I think that was something which I truly wish uh, is the aspect that PSC was more directly involved with at the time, definitely, and even at the time when we were doing it. I think best ways to do it, we kind of went by it. When, as Shreyas was talking about, there was that mindset that we really wanted to change, which we were able to do. But I think lately, more and more, I've been feeling that it's just not enough as well. I think today the world is extremely polarized, and that results in so much misinformation, so much disinformation for people. And I think the only thing that can truly protect people in that case is uh, data, uh, which helps you distinguish facts from farce. And that is something which I wish Project Statecraft did well. Uh, the other thing is when it comes to public policy, something which I would really hope PSC does well and would do well is to work on the grassroots of policy, which is with local governments, and that is something which I think can have such a tremendous impact in a country like India, which has gotten used to this top to bottom, top down approach of policy implementation, which I think just does not work. And in order to fix that, I think it's very, very important we do some work on the grassroots. So when it comes to that, I really wish PSC is more involved there. Um, and lastly, is creating less lonelier community spaces for people. Unfortunately, public policy, which was something which should have ideally been the thread that ties a diverse country like ours together, was never able to do that because I think it has always been portrayed as a very elitist construct. And I think I'm extremely against putting it that way. I think public policy is something which has to be a day-to-day conversation, has to be a dinner time conversation. And one of the main reasons is because I grew up in that, and it has been extremely rewarding for me. So I would like to help build those community spaces via PSC that can really help people make this a day-to-day data-driven conversation that is also impacting a lot of people.
That's truly very empowering to hear. Shreyas, do you have any thoughts to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very on board with Abhishek's vision already. I think the grassroots problem is something that Project Statecraft should actively aim to solve, and I think there are steps being taken in that direction as well, which is very, very good to see. Uh, I think the first change that I would do is it would really help if Project Statecraft wasn't non-partisan. I've always advocated for this for a long time, that having opinions creates better research. But obviously, there are advantages to being keeping it nonpartisan, and it's one of the core tenets of the organization. So it's more a joke suggestion, if anything else. Uh, the other thing is, I'm pretty impatient about creating impact, and Abhishek is always there to sort of tone it down and keep it uh, realistic as possible. But this is sort of the space I'm going to use to put all those ideas out there. and say that I think Project Statecraft should be in the very big spaces, and the top-down approach as well has to be kept in mind. So I want Project Statecraft to sort of be the harbinger of youth representation in all these big spaces like parliament, like different committees in ministries and places like that, because it's a place that's currently lacking. We see representation in so many other fields, but never youth representation at the forefront of what we talk about. So I think if Project Statecraft can sort of be the platform that champions that, will be a huge plus. The final thing is more of an internal vision that I've always had for Project Statecraft, and something again I've brought up in internal meetings in the past is I wish Project Statecraft could be more representative, and in the sense that there is so much to policy that comes from a place of privilege, right? I mean, people who can dedicate their lives to creating impact, sacrificing their own, mainly because of how the field is structured and the sort of barriers that you face for entry into the field. So, from something as simple as language, right? I mean, most of policy happens in English, which is already a barrier to millions of people in this country. And there's also a lot of economic resources that sort of create barriers to entry. So if Project Statecraft be more representative of people like that, I think it'd be a huge plus. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges to inculcating something like this, especially in a organization that's hybrid and works part-time and relies a lot on volunteer work. It's obviously very, very, very difficult to achieve. And so I naturally see the challenges. It's just very wishful thinking that representation is a reality for this organization.
Well, with all those aspirations, addressing issues like accessibility and ensuring that it's accessible, this very basic right of knowing how our government functions and advocating that youth are more involved in the policy making progress. It's a very simple mission that so many people have understated in this country. And it's really, really empowering to know that individuals like yourself have been very, very vocal about your missions. Now, my last question before we wrap up this very special recording is to Abhishek, of course. What is next for Project Statecraft with all these aspirations discussed? What lies ahead for this movement?
Wow. Like putting that question immediately after everything that Shreyas mentioned seems like, like now you're putting me on the spot to really say, is everything that Shreyas mentioned really on the table or not? And honestly, it is, because I think everything that I mentioned when it comes to the aspects of public policy that uh, need to have PSC involved are underpinned by everything that Shreyas mentioned, and representation, and that representation of young people as well as representation of marginalized communities among young people is definitely something which we want to do at PSC. Yes, it is definitely one of the things that we are still figuring out how to go about. Um, but I think something which is very core to what we want to do at PSC is to look at how we can change the lives of as many young people as we can. And access is one thing, empowerment is another. But I think everything that we've been doing uh, is towards that. And at the same time, I think as it is a gamble, as with democracy, volunteering is also a gamble. I think I will, I, as an organization that is youth led, as an organization that is volunteer focused, uh, not everything that we do is something which can be uh, told to everybody else in the organization. I think a lot of ideas, a lot of what we do is something that comes from within the organization, from within the volunteers who are working towards their specific causes. And with Shreyas's help, we've been trying to institutionalize that to inform the decision making that we do as much as we can to truly build that culture. So I think that's one of the biggest what's next for PSC. And except that, I think when we are successful at doing that, that is when we want to look at how best can we really impact the grassroots, like I was talking about earlier, and how best we can look at taking Project Statecraft's representation and voice into those chambers of power that have not heard a youth voice in ever since they were made, to be honest, right? And these are some of the things that we want to do next. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. I think as you hear from a lot of others who are working actively on more operational things within PSC, you would hear how we are moving towards this. But yeah, I think what seemed like a jumble of ideas once is this really, really beautiful symphony today. And I think I just can't stop thanking everybody who's been part of this journey, and it's gonna be the same for years to come. So yeah, also I will take this very quick opportunity to clickbait something. Because it's not just that, like, yes, Shreyas has been very vocal about how we need to be partisan, but PSC is not something which would do that. Um, so we are doing our own Substack where we will focus on a lot of partisan writing, because yes, we do have opinions, and opinions can lead to great research. And while this is not related to PSC, I think it should be a huge what's next for Shreyas and Abhishek. So yeah, like I'm definitely clickbaiting this and clickbaiting people into doing this, because by the time this episode goes out there, we'll have our Substack up.
Well, that's a very hopeful note to end on this very special recording of A Tryst with Statecraft. And with that, we come to the end of this recording. I cannot begin to thank the team. Of course, it's a very special recording. This is for the first time we're having two guests over sharing their very intimate journeys here at Project Statecraft. First off, I'd like to first acknowledge Ananya, who is present here from the podcast scene. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And of course, Abhishek and Shreyas, hearing your journeys, it's truly been so empowering, and it makes me more proud to be part of this incredible journey with you. And it's really, really cool to know how each of your paths have led to creating this incredible organization. And I'm sure all the volunteers here have to say likewise. And to know that we are living in a time where public policy has emerged to be a very promising field for young entrepreneurs or those who are just figuring out how our government functions. It's really inspiring to know that anybody who just has that spark of passion can take it up and do it so seamlessly well, like you guys have. So once again, on behalf of everyone here with A Tryst with Statecraft, I'd like to thank both of you for your time here today.
Thanks, Teresa. It was lovely being on this podcast, and yeah, loved the questions, loved interacting, and this was such a very fortunate to have been paired with Shreyas to do this. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, no, great questions. Great space for me to introspect a lot. So thank you for that. And yeah, lovely to be here.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And until the next recording, it's your host, Teresa Kuruvilla, signing off.